Previously on DJ Red and Todd's story, the storm wasn't the only thing testing the group. It all started when Nick got mauled by a zombie wolf outside the cabin. His arm was hanging on by a thread, and the chemist told Todd there was only one way to save him: take it off. Amber heated her hatchet in the fire until it glowed red. Todd braced himself, and, with the chemist barking orders, they amputated Nick's arm right there on the cabin floor. The smell wasn't pleasant. Ed nearly puked, and Todd smoked half a pack in the aftermath, but Nick survived the night. With supplies running dangerously low, the crew took the beat-up Yugo out into the storm, aiming for the Walgreens Amber remembered. The drive was a disaster. Ed spun the car a full 360 on black ice, sent everyone's gear flying, and somehow managed to look proud of it. Mr. Nibbles ate Ed's emergency Slim Jim in the middle of the chaos, which didn't help his mood. At Walgreens, things went sideways fast. Devon Cassidy and his goons showed up, the kind of guys who looked like they got kicked out of a meth clinic for being too rowdy. His crew included the ever-useless Knife, who squealed about Mr. Nibbles like a little kid spotting a rat. Knife spent most of the fight pissing himself and begging not to be touched, proving once again why nobody wanted him on their side. The shootout was loud, bloody, and ugly. Psycho and Jason showed up in the nick of time, Jason cool and composed with his gold-plated lever action, Psycho laughing like a lunatic while swinging his AK like a baseball bat. Together they put two of Devon's men in the ground. Devon, meanwhile, bolted like a coward, dove through a window and stole the Yugo right out from under them. To add insult to injury, Todd's rifle was still in the trunk. The only thing Devon left behind was poor Knife, who managed to die of a heart attack from sheer fear. Honestly, it was the most useful thing Knife ever did for anyone. In the end, Jason and Psycho gave the group a lift, a spare gun, and some solid advice. But Devon's out there, with their car, their rifle, and his eyes set on blood. The Walgreens was half lit by the dim gray light filtering through its busted windows, snow drifting in every now and then with the wind. The shelves, long looted, still carried the faint smell of dust, cheap perfume, and stale medicine. Todd kept his AR tight against his shoulder as Jason and Psycho stood with them now, the tension of the firefight still lingering. Ed was still crouched near his Shaquille O'Neal cutout, clutching Mr. Nibbles like the honey badger was an assault rifle. DJ Red leaned back against a cracked pharmacy counter, trying to catch his breath while glancing between the newcomers and the blown-out back door. Jason, steady, calm, lowered his gold-engraved lever-action rifle just enough to show he wasn't aiming at them anymore. "That was Devon Cassidy himself," he said, voice low, steady like gravel under boots. "If he took your car, he'll be gunning for your home next, but don't worry, you're not alone in this anymore." Psycho stood nearby, AK drum slung over his chest, the hockey mask streaked with fresh zombie gore and Devon's man's blood. He gave a grunt and kicked at Knife's lifeless body. Guess he wasn't worth keeping around anyway. Todd scanned the floor, then turned to Jason. "We came here for meds. One of ours back home, his arm's gone to hell. Without antibiotics, he won't make it. We're on foot now. No car, no easy way out. You said you had a backup ride?" Jason nodded once. "A mile north, nothing fancy. Old SUV we keep hidden in case things get bad." Ed, still clutching the honey badger, perked up. "SUV? 4 doors? 4-wheel drive? Please tell me it's got heated seats." Psycho barked out a laugh that sounded more like a cough through his mask. "It's got 4 wheels and an engine. That's about all you'll get." Todd exhaled hard through his nose, lowering his weapon a little but not fully. He was still running combat math in his head. Devon had slipped through their fingers, now armed with their Yugo and a rifle. But they weren't empty-handed. They had Jason and Psycho, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to balance the scale. Jason tightened the strap on his rifle and said, "But first, we need to get you those meds. You're not walking out of here empty-handed." The Walgreens air was heavy with dust and the smell of wet cardboard. Everyone froze when Ed suddenly stomped down on a pack of Milk-Bone biscuits scattered across the floor. "God damn it," he hollered, face red, stomping again. Crunch. Everyone spun toward him. Todd, hand still near his AR, narrowed his eyes. "Ed, what the hell are you doing?" Ed, dead serious, pointed at the crushed box. "Why in the fuck would Walgreens turn dogs into biscuits, huh? What kind of evil?" DJ Red wheezed a laugh and leaned against the shelf. Amber pinched the bridge of her nose, muttering, "Lord, help me." Psycho, behind his hockey mask, let out a deep, distorted laugh that sounded like a bear growl. Even Jason cracked a grin, shaking his head. Before anyone could answer, Psycho stepped forward, AK's drum mag swinging against his chest. He raised one boot, smashed it into the back pharmacy door, and the entire frame cracked and splintered. With another slam, the lock gave way. The heavy door swung open with a long groan. Inside, rows of toppled pill bottles, scattered boxes, and smashed glass glinting faintly in the dim light. Behind the counter, a half-rusted safe sat open, shelves stripped bare except for a few dusty bottles and scattered blister packs. Jason nodded to Todd. "Not much left, but maybe enough to buy your buddy some time." The smashed pharmacy door still swung on half-broken hinges when Ed came barreling back in, arms flailing, eyes wide as saucers. His boot caught on Knife's corpse, sprawled across the floor. Whump. Ed face-planted, skidding across the tile and into a shelf of gauze rolls. He let out a pitiful yelp and sat up with tears in his eyes. "God damn it," he sniffled, rubbing his knee like a kid. "There's zombies everywhere. We gotta get the hell out before," he pointed to the bite mark on his jacket sleeve, "before Mr. Nibbles decides I look like lunch again." The honey badger perked up from the counter like it heard its name, lips curling in a little snarl as if to say, "Don't test me, pal." Todd cursed under his breath, snatching up a half-full bottle of antibiotics. Jason slung his lever action to his chest and stepped toward the doorway, peeking out at the flickering Walgreens sign beyond. Shadows were moving outside, slow, uneven, unmistakable. Psycho chambered around in his AK. "He ain't wrong," he rumbled. "They're closing in." DJ Red muttered into his mic recorder, "Static's getting louder, folks. Might be the last broadcast if we don't book it soon." The tension grew thick as the groans outside multiplied, echoing through the frozen parking lot. Todd's voice cut sharp through the tension. "Amber, Ed, load up the meds. Every pill bottle, every bandage you can stuff into a pack. DJ Red, Jason, Psycho, we're holding the line until they breach." Amber didn't argue, just yanked open a plastic tote and started sweeping bottles of antibiotics, painkillers, and gauze into it. Ed scrambled behind her, arms full of cough syrup and rubbing alcohol like it was gold, nearly tripping over the Shaquille O'Neal cutout again. "God damn it, Ed," Todd barked. "Don't drop the meds." Ed puffed his chest like he was proud of himself. "I ain't dropping shit, Sarge!" Then he immediately dropped a bottle of hydrogen peroxide, which shattered all over the floor. Mr. Nibbles gave him a look that could have been mistaken for disappointment. From the front of the Walgreens, the glass doors began to rattle against the weight of dozens of hands slamming against them. The moans grew louder, layered and discordant. And then, crash! The glass burst inward, a spray of shards crunching across the linoleum. Figures stumbled in, snow-caked and gray-eyed, moving in jerks and lunges. "Open fire!" Todd roared. Jason's gold-plated 4570 barked once, the recoil echoing through the aisles, dropping a zombie with its skull split wide. Psycho swept the room with his AK, the drum magazine spitting fire and brass across the floor. DJ Red crouched low, squeezing off rounds with his sidearm, his breath heavy into the mic recorder clipped to his vest. "Static's breaking, folks. This is what the end sounds like." Todd sighted down his AR's iron sights, precise as ever, taking heads one by one. "Hold steady, we're buying them time." Amber and Ed staggered past, arms overloaded with crates of meds. "We're good!" Amber shouted, her voice cracking. "We got what we need." Todd spared one last shot into the advancing horde, then barked, "Fall back! To the rear exit! Move!" The group began pulling back, snowflakes gusting in from the broken front windows as more and more shapes poured into the store. The store shook with the sound of gunfire and the groans of the dead, as Psycho was suddenly cut off from the group, swallowed by the tide of bodies clawing their way through the busted Walgreens front. "Damn it, Ryan!" Jason bellowed, firing another round from his gleaming lever action. His voice cracked with the kind of panic only brothers in arms knew. But Psycho? Psycho just grinned beneath the cracked glass of his mask. He let out a manic laugh that rattled the walls louder than the gunfire. "You think this is it?" he barked, spinning his AK-47 in his hands. Instead of firing, he swung it like a Louisville slugger. Whack! The buttstock crunched into a zombie's jaw, sending teeth flying like dice across the linoleum. Crack! Another one's skull popped as he jammed the side of the weapon into its temple, and Psycho laughed harder. A deep, wild, unhinged laugh that carried over the chaos. Come on then! Step up! You want a piece of me? The horde pressed tighter, clawing at his clothes, dragging at his shoulders. But Psycho fought like a man who had nothing left to lose, using the rifle as a bat, a hammer, a spear, swinging, smashing, shoving bodies down. Jason cursed again, almost breaking formation. We can't leave him! Todd grabbed his arm, eyes locked on the chaos. We don't have a choice unless you want to die too. His voice was cold, tactical, but his grip trembled. Through the storm of bodies, Psycho's laughter still rang out, feral, triumphant. Even as he vanished beneath the mass of grasping hands, you could still hear him, laughing and cursing the dead like he was dragging them down with him. Amber, wide-eyed and shaking, muttered, "He's insane." Jason swallowed hard, jaw locked tight. "No," he said, voice heavy with grief and respect. He was a soldier. The store was nothing but chaos. Shelves toppling, empty pill bottles rolling across the tile, and muzzle flashes cutting through the dark as Jason kept firing. Each shot echoed like thunder, and the air filled with the rancid smell of rot and cordite. Pull back! Pull back! Todd barked, shoving Ed and Amber toward the smashed pharmacy counter. DJ Red covered the retreat, his Glock barking short bursts while the snowstorm outside howled through shattered windows. They spun toward the exit, backs nearly against the wall when it happened. The pharmacy's side door, the one they thought had been swallowed by the dead, creaked and then slammed open. Blood sprayed across the frame like paint. Standing there in the threshold was Psycho. His mask was cracked, one eye barely visible through the splintered visor, and his whole body was coated in gore. Zombie blood. His blood, it was impossible to tell. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the zombies closest to him hesitated, distracted by the feral silhouette filling the doorway. Psycho leaned heavily on the AK, breathing in ragged bursts, then let out a laugh. Not wild like before. This time it was low, dark, like gravel grinding under a steel boot. Y'all miss me? Jason's chest heaved, his rifle lowering just a fraction. Ryan! Psycho stumbled forward, dragging the AK along the ground, and with one last push of manic energy, he slammed the door behind him, cutting off a portion of the horde still outside. Blood streaked down the wall as he steadied himself, but there was a grin under that shattered mask. Amber whispered, "Jesus Christ, he made it." Todd didn't waste a second. "Form back up. He bought us time, don't waste it." The group tightened formation around Psycho's bloody figure, the flickering Walgreens lights catching his mask, his laughter echoing faintly over the growls of the dead still pounding against the doors. The gunfire faded into the snowstorm, and the moans of the dead were muffled by the boarded-up Walgreens walls. Todd barked for everyone to move, and Jason immediately took point, his gold-engraved lever action gleaming even in the dim light. Psycho stumbled alongside him, still streaked in blood but steady enough to wield the AK like a shield. "Follow us now!" Jason shouted over his shoulder. The group poured out through the side exit, boots crunching through ice and slush, the wind howling like a warning. Amber kept tight to Todd's side, clutching her hatchet. Ed, with Mr. Nibbles clinging to his shoulder like a furry pirate, muttered about the cold biting harder than zombies ever could. DJ Red had his collar pulled up high, radio mic tucked under his jacket as if the storm itself might short it out. Then, through the blowing snow, the shape appeared. Squat, boxy, and defiant against time. An old military Humvee. Its olive paint was scarred with rust, the windshield cracked, but its bulk sat solid, tires chained for the ice. A faded white stencil on the door still read, U.S. Army. Jason slapped the hood with a gloved hand. "This beast ain't pretty, but she'll get us out alive. Surplus salvaged her years ago. Always kept her fueled and stashed in case of days like this." Psycho leaned against the side, mask cracked but grin audible in his voice. "Best part is, plenty of room for all your sorry asses." Todd quickly ushered Amber and Ed inside, DJ Red crawling in after them with his pack. Mr. Nibbles immediately jumped onto the dashboard like he owned the damn thing. Jason and Psycho slid into the front, Jason twisting the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life, the low diesel growl rattling the snowflakes off the roof. For the first time since the Walgreens siege, the group exhaled as one. The storm was still closing in, the road ahead dangerous and unknown, but inside that Humvee there was a fragile bubble of safety, the kind that only veterans and survivors could carve out in a world gone to hell. Inside the Humvee, the heater coughed up just enough warm air to cut the bite of the snowstorm. Diesel fumes mingled with the faint smell of blood still clinging to Psycho's mask, and the low rumble of the engine felt like a heartbeat under everyone's boots. Psycho leaned back, streaks of dried crimson cracking on his mask as he laughed, a deep, guttural sound that somehow cut the tension instead of raising it. "Ain't the first time I've looked death in the face," he said, tapping the side of his bloodied mask with a gloved finger. "Sure as hell won't be the last." Todd, sitting across with his rifle resting against his knees, gave a long exhale through his nose. His dog tags jingled when the Humvee hit a bump. "Death's one thing," he muttered, eyes scanning the snow-coated windshield. "Devon's another. He doesn't know where we're holed up yet, but he's close. Too close. It's only a matter of time before he sniffs us out." Jason, hands steady on the wheel, nodded grimly. The firelight from the dashboard glinted off the gold inlays of his lever-action rifle propped between the seats. "Devon's crew already killed 3 of ours," Jason said flatly. "Me and Ryan can't walk you all the way back. We've got our own people counting on us. But we'll get you to our SUV stashed up the road, tanks half full. We'll even leave you a spare rifle. You're gonna need it." Amber, sitting tense beside Todd, chewed the inside of her cheek but said nothing. The weight of the words sat heavy. Ed broke the silence with his usual misplaced timing. He popped his head up from the back seat like he'd just solved a mystery. "So let me get this straight," he said, pointing between Jason and Psycho. "You're telling me you two basically the zombie apocalypse Batman and Robin? Except Robin looks like he just walked out of a slasher flick and Batman's rocking a Sunday church suit?" Jason cracked the faintest grin. Psycho let out another booming laugh, nearly smacking the ceiling of the Humvee with the butt of his AK as he doubled over. "Shit," Psycho barked. "I'll take that, zombie apocalypse Batman. Except I don't brood, I drink." Ed sat back smugly. Mr. Nibbles perched on his lap, chewing on what used to be a leather glove. "Fine," Ed said. "Just don't ask me to wear tights. Last time I tried tights, I got arrested. Long story." Even Todd let out a small chuckle, though he quickly covered it by lighting one of his last cigarettes, the ember glowing like a tiny star in the dark. Jason shook his head, muttering, "Christ, y'all are insane. But maybe that's what it takes to survive these days." The Humvee roared on through the snow, leaving a trail of churned slush and smoke, the faintest flicker of camaraderie flickering inside despite the storm, and the knowledge that Devon was still out there, closing in. The SUV sat at the edge of the tree line, half buried in snow, a tired old Chevy Suburban with rust chewing at the wheel wells. The windshield was spider-cracked in one corner, but the body was intact enough. Jason and Psycho parked the Humvee nose to nose with it, both men hopping out without hesitation. Jason shouldered his rifle and moved briskly, his boots crunching in the snow. "All right, let's not waste time. Devon will be sniffing around and I don't want him catching wind we were here." Todd nodded, giving a sharp wave to Amber and Ed. Together, they started hauling bags of medical supplies out of the Humvee and over to the Suburban's rear cargo hold. Each pack thudded against the metal floor with the weight of bandages, antibiotics, syringes, and painkillers. Jason pulled Todd aside, lowering his voice, one hand resting firm on his shoulder. "Listen to me. Keep that wound clean. Change the dressing twice a day if you can. If it smells rotten or the skin goes black, you've got gangrene setting in. Boil what water you can and sterilize every piece of cloth you use. Don't cut corners, not with this." His gaze was steady, the tone more like a commanding officer than a comrade. Todd held his stare and gave a slow nod. "I won't, thanks." Meanwhile, Ed, grunting with effort, was dragging a box labeled cough syrup, children's grape flavor, like it weighed as much as bricks. Mr. Nibbles was perched on top of it, nibbling at the cardboard corners like he thought it was food. The second the Suburban's front door swung open, the honey badger leapt down and scrambled up into the passenger seat, plopping himself right in the front like he'd been driving cars his whole life. He sat there calm, chest puffed out like a little king, claws tapping the dash. "Looks like he called shotgun," Psycho said, laughing hard enough to fog his mask from the inside. Ed sighed. "Well, guess that's that. Damn critter don't even pay gas money." Jason and Psycho exchanged a final look with Todd's group. Jason extended a battered two-way radio, pressing it into Todd's palm. "Channel 3 every night at sundown. If Devon's coming or if you're in over your head, you call. We'll come if we can." Todd clipped it to his belt. "Appreciate it, more than you know." Jason simply nodded once. Psycho slapped the Suburban's hood hard enough to make snow fall from the roof. "Now get the hell out of here before this storm eats you alive." The engine sputtered, coughed, then caught with a low growl. Todd slid into the driver's seat, Amber beside him. Ed shuffled into the back, muttering about how he wanted heated seats. The headlights cut through the swirling snow, the beam washing over the scarred road ahead. As they pulled away, Jason and Psycho's silhouettes grew small in the rearview mirror, two warriors fading back into the storm, while Mr. Nibbles sat proud in the passenger seat, staring out the windshield like he owned the world. The Suburban hummed its way back through the storm, tires crunching on snow-caked pavement. The blizzard still whipped across the windshield in thin, slanting sheets, but as they pressed on, the road began to reveal its strange, haunting beauty. The woods on either side of the road stood like silent sentinels, branches bowed heavy with snow, their black limbs etched stark against the glowing white. Every so often, a gust of wind shook the treetops and sent cascades of powder glittering down, catching in the weak beam of the headlights like falling stars. Above them, a flock of crows traced black arcs through the gray sky. Their wings beat in eerie unison, sharp cries echoing down the valley, a reminder that not all life had vanished with the old world. Against the snow's blank canvas, their dark forms looked like brushstrokes on a forgotten painting. Todd glanced through the window and let out a low breath, the glow of his cigarette flickering in the reflection. For all the ruin, the death, the noise of gunfire still fresh in their ears, this stretch of road carried a stillness, an impossible calm. Amber, watching the crows from the back seat, whispered, "It almost looks beautiful," and it did. Despite the apocalypse, despite the fear, they found themselves driving through a world wrapped in white, serene and vast, like something sacred had survived the chaos. Even Mr. Nibbles, perched proudly on the dash, seemed content, nose twitching at the sight of snowfall drifting lazily past the glass. The Suburban's headlights carved a tunnel through the storm, leading them deeper into the quiet wilderness. For a brief, fleeting moment, it felt less like they were running from the end of the world, and more like they were gliding through a dream they didn't want to wake from. The cabin was dim and heavy with the smell of wood smoke and sweat. They hauled the medical supplies in quick stomping snow from their boots as they went. Nick lay on the old bed frame by the fire, pale and shivering, the stump of his arm already an ugly shade of red and purple. His breaths came shallow, sweat shining on his forehead. The chemist hovered over him, hands steady but voice low. "About time. He's in rough shape, we're cutting it close." He cracked open the kit, shaking out vials, bandages, and pills with a speed that betrayed the urgency. Todd helped unwrap the filthy dressing and passed him fresh gauze. Ed leaned over the bed, squinting like he was trying to diagnose a car problem. Nick's skin was blotched and angry, heat radiating from the wound. Ed wrinkled his nose. "I don't think Nick's supposed to look like a lobster, is he?" Amber shot him a glare sharp enough to cut, but Ed just shrugged, wide-eyed and earnest. "What? Man's red as hell." Todd ignored him, setting his rifle against the wall and kneeling by Nick's side. He handed the chemist rubbing alcohol and held Nick down as the man poured it over the wound. Nick groaned, eyes fluttering, but didn't wake. Mr. Nibbles padded into the room, claws clicking on the wood floor, and hopped up onto a chair near the bed. He sat watching with that eerie stillness only animals had, like he somehow knew the stakes. Outside, the snow beat against the windows in a steady hiss, the storm wrapping them in isolation. For a moment, everyone was silent except for the hiss of alcohol on raw flesh and Nick's rattling breath. The fight to keep him alive had only just begun. The chemist cracked his knuckles, pulling out a pair of latex gloves, old and powdered, yellowed with age, but better than nothing. "First things first, we keep this clean," he said. Todd and Amber hovered close, watching his hands carefully. He nodded toward Todd. "Get me some boiled water. Doesn't have to be perfect, but hot enough to kill whatever's crawling in it." Todd moved fast. grabbing the dented kettle off the stove, steam still rolling out. The chemist peeled away the old filthy wrapping around Nick's arm. The gauze clung stubbornly, ripping small patches of skin as it came free. The wound was angry red, swollen, streaked faintly up the arm, early signs of infection spreading. Nick groaned, eyes rolling beneath his lids. "Bad," the chemist muttered, "but not gone yet." He poured the hot water over a clean rag and pressed it firmly around the wound to loosen dried blood and pus. The smell filled the cabin, a coppery rot that made Ed gag and mutter, "Smells like one of them gas station bathrooms." Ignoring him, the chemist grabbed a brown bottle of rubbing alcohol. "This'll burn like hell, even unconscious." He glanced at Amber. "Hold him steady." Amber pressed her weight onto Nick's shoulder as the chemist trickled the clear liquid directly over the raw stump. The hiss of alcohol against exposed tissue drew a ragged groan from Nick's throat. His back arched involuntarily, but Amber held him in place. Todd helped pin his legs down. "Good, that's flushing it," the chemist said. He dabbed the wound dry with sterile gauze, then reached for a packet of powdered antibiotics, salvaged from a med kit. He sprinkled the fine dust over the wound before layering on thick, sterile pads. Next came the wrapping. He tore open a roll of bandage wrap and wound it snugly around the arm, tight enough to control swelling, loose enough not to cut off circulation. When he tied it off, he slid 2 fingers under the edge to check. "Still has blood flow, good." Finally, he secured the stump in a makeshift sling, raising it slightly on a rolled blanket to reduce blood pooling. Todd lit a cigarette with shaking hands, exhaling hard. "So now what?" The chemist peeled off his gloves, wiping sweat from his brow. "Now we keep him clean, change those dressings twice a day. Watch for streaks moving up the arm, swelling, fever. If it turns black, we cut again. If not, antibiotics and rest might pull him through." Ed, looking pale but trying to be helpful, nodded gravely. "Well, at least you don't look like a lobster anymore." Amber shot him a glare, but the chemist almost cracked a smile. The morning was pale and frigid, a gray hush clinging to the cabin as the group huddled around Nick's cot. His breath came shallow at first, then steadier. Finally, his eyes blinked open, bloodshot and heavy, before his gaze fell to the bundled stump where his arm should have been. "Where's my arm?" he croaked, voice dry as sand. The room went quiet, until Ed piped up, leaning forward like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Well, bad news, Nick. Your hand packed its bags and left you." Ed paused for dramatic effect, then cracked a grin. "Said it was tired of being your girlfriend." Nick blinked, too stunned to speak. Todd groaned, dragging a palm over his face. Amber muttered, "For God's sake, Ed," but couldn't quite smother the smirk tugging at her mouth. Even the chemist snorted under his breath as if he was trying not to encourage him. Nick finally rasped, half delirious but offended, "The hell kind of joke is that?" Ed shrugged innocently. "Don't shoot the messenger, she told me herself." Little Hand just walked right out the door. Despite the grim reality, the cabin broke into a ragged chorus of laughter, exhausted, nervous, but real. For one fleeting moment, the weight of the apocalypse lightened just a little. Old Boy practically glued himself to Amber's side as soon as she walked back through the cabin door. The beagle's tail wagged so hard it looked like it might fall off, and he curled himself at her boots as if daring anyone to move her away again. Meanwhile, Mr. Nibbles was doing his usual chaos, perched on Ed's lap, gnawing furiously on the frayed brim of Ed's lucky hat. Every few seconds, Ed would tug it back and scold, "Damn it, critter, that's the only thing keeping me alive out here." Then, when Mr. Nibbles hissed and went right back to chewing, Ed just sighed and muttered, "Yeah, all right, fine, you win again." Todd leaned against the old wood stove, watching the fire crackle low while he spoke to the chemist. "We ran into some folks, Jason and Psycho, solid guys. They pulled our asses out of Walgreens when Devon showed up." The chemist's eyes narrowed, and he rubbed his chin. "Jason and Psycho, huh? That tracks. I heard about a vet group like them. But listen, Devon's not done. Before I split from that sorry bastard's militia, I lifted some of their maps. Rating schedules, notes on supply caches, even talk about safe houses." He tapped the side of his head like he could still see the documents in his mind. "They've got plans to hit 2 camps north of here, real soon." Amber's face tightened, running a hand through her hair. So it's only a matter of time before they come sniffing around here too. The chemist nodded grimly. Yeah. Devon doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. He's got boys who'll die for him. But with what I've got tucked away, we might have a fighting chance, if we're smart about it. Ed, had still dangling in Mr. Nibbles' jaws, tried to lighten the mood. Fighting chance, huh? Well, as long as I'm in the fight, we're guaranteed at least one good distraction. He puffed up his chest proudly, then yelped as Mr. Nibbles tugged the hat clean off and bolted under the cot with it. The laughter that broke out around the room was the only warmth the cabin had beyond the fire. The chemist adjusted the dials with a careful hand until Jason's voice cut through the static. We read you, Red. What have you got? DJ Red leaned into the mic. Bad news. The intel Devon left behind, he's planning raids. Not on us this time. He hesitated, looking to Todd. He's got your camp in his sights within the next couple weeks. For a moment, nothing but silence and faint snow crackled through the line. Then Jason's voice came back, tight with anger. Figures. He's been circling us for months, killed 3 of ours already. In the background, Psycho laughed, loud, wild. Let him come. I'll stack his men like firewood. Jason cut him off, his tone sharper now. This isn't a joke, Ryan. We'll need to reinforce, dig in hard. If Devon's making a move, he won't stop with us. Todd stepped closer to the radio, his jaw clenched. We'll help however we can. If Devon takes your camp, he gets stronger. That means all of us are in trouble. Jason sighed through the static, the weight of command in his voice. Copy that. We'll prepare. Stay sharp on your end, too. If he's watching us, chances are he's watching you. Red signed off, the cabin sinking back into uneasy quiet. Outside, Ed dropped his wrench with a clang and swore at the SUV. Mr. Nibbles scurried off with Ed's chewed hat again, and for one fleeting second, everyone almost laughed before the reality set back in. Devon Cassidy was on the move, and the storm was only getting started.